Good. So, welcome to BEwell, the Business and Entrepreneur Well-Being Talk. It's a roundtable discussion. I'm Debbie Spaltman, and I'm your host for today's meeting. I'm standing in for Gary Marcus Judge. He's the BEwell founder, and he normally hosts these events, these weekly conversations. He's traveling today, so when he'll be back next week, just as normal. Our guest speaker today is Katja Marianne Noordam. Did I say that right, Katja?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. Good. Katja is a business and social impact expert, human rights advisor, and she is the founder of two enterprises, Fair Change and Kathmandu Media. And she's proudly building on 20 plus years of international business experience. She's passionate about strategy design, leadership development, and impactful storytelling for positive, sustainable change. She has supported hundreds of leaders and organizations around the world, offering management advice, training, coaching, and action-oriented tools that are all about these companies being able to grow their social impact. She works in the languages English, Spanish, and Dutch. Today, Katja told me she will be talking to us about purpose-driven leadership from the heart, about social cause contribution in business, and how leadership that promotes sustainability, that is mission-driven and on purpose, is key to changing the world. She's told me that lately she works with businesses on countering the mistrust that is coming from greenwashing, and is working with these leaders of businesses because we need businesses on our side if we want to build a better world. So I'll be dropping Katja's contact information in the chat. You can copy it there for yourselves. And now, welcome, Katja, over to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting me and having me here. And just Sandy and Steven, so you know, we have been, Debbie and I have been having a prior chat, which was a lovely conversation. And I think the point of this setup as well, that it is a conversation and it's not scripted beforehand. We've been going through several topics and questions that will be interesting for us to delve into, but it's also an invitation to you, Stephen and Sandy, if you have questions or although I'll be speaking about my work with enterprises, large and small, and businesses in general, I think it will, and leaders, business leaders, but I'm also working with nonprofit and civil society leaders. But I would also like to make it as relatable for you as possible. So if there are things from your own experience that you would like to ask or add, please do so. And let's make this a lively conversation. That will be most interesting, I think.
I have the first question for you, Katja. And because you have such vast experience in this, you know, when we were talking, you were telling me you had worked in Colombia with even gorillas, you know, with and companies that were impacted by gorillas and things. So how have you seen businesses actually successfully, I wrote it down so I don't forget it, so I have to write it, successfully integrate the social good into their core strategies? I mean, so you know, on your website, you had things like, speaking of which reminds me of something I wanted to share. Katja has a lot of free resources on her website, so I put the links in there so you guys can go and download those. But you were talking about, you know, like sustainable development, or how can businesses, you know, even small businesses like ours, right? So I know, you know, Sandy has her own business. I have my own business. Stephen has his own business. How can we small businesses integrate the social good? How can we do that? What would you advise us?
Yeah. Yes, let's maybe a note on the first thing you shared about my experience in Colombia. I've been living and working in Colombia for over 15 years, and I've worked a lot as an advisor to businesses, ranging from global multinational companies to local companies, small-scale companies, and solo entrepreneurs, startups, etc. So the whole range of businesses, and that is what I always love doing. So in Colombia especially, although I didn't work directly with guerrillas, I have worked a lot with businesses who are committed to contributing to economic recovery of areas affected by the internal conflict, which still involves in some regions, although the heat of the conflict fortunately has been reduced a lot, affected by guerrillas and also by paramilitary groups. So I think actually this was also the moment I had been working in, maybe share a personal story. I had been working with communities and with social leaders for my career, during my whole career up till then. And it was actually working in such an area that was highly affected by the internal conflict, in an operating area of a palm oil company, that there was this moment that sparked my new direction of wanting to work with businesses directly, as Debbie already said. I mean, I am convinced that we need businesses on our side to create a better world. And I was so overwhelmed with the damage that was done by that particular business, that was a provider to Europe, where a lot of there was a whole wave of biofuels, a lot of interest in palm oil as a biofuel. Now, this was years ago. Now we're more critical because we know the damage, the environmental harm that monoculture does, and also the human rights harm. So I saw this all playing out literally in front of my eyes, and local communities so extremely poor that they couldn't afford to buy diapers for their babies, and they walked on barefoot in the mud. That was one part of the community in this operating area, and the other ones were like young guys on flashy motorbikes and like Hollywood sunglasses, and they like neatly dressed, and they looked down on the other ones that didn't work with the company because they had the jobs and they had the income to build a better life, but they as well were very vulnerable because at any moment they could be thrown out by the company. So it was so overwhelming, and I thought, my heart lies with communities and with helping local people and build up their capacity and their economic empowerment. But if we don't have businesses on board, we can only get so far. So that's when I decided to start working with businesses. And actually on that road, I have met and have been fortunate enough to work with a lot of companies, large companies as well, who were really committed to giving back to communities where maybe they didn't have such a positive role in the past, and really committed to building peace and investing in local communities, providing jobs, injecting money, etc., to invest in the sustainable development of those communities. So I think this is both the good and the bad that I've seen in play out in practice there in Colombia, are inspiring in my work today. So and then the second part of your question, Debbie, what can small businesses do? I think any business, what any business can do, yeah, there are many things, but let's mention several. So what you can start doing is, if you are committed to contributing to a better planet and to the well-being of people, choose your area of impact. Choose an area where you feel a connection with. And yeah, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a very good framework as a start, because there are 17 goals, global goals, with 169 targets. And these have been put together after a thorough consulting process, including governments, businesses, civil society organizations, young people. Everybody has had their say. And these outline the key global challenges and opportunities, environmentally and socially, where you can that you can take. You can select several and take that as a starting point. Sorry, I see you raising your hand,
Yeah,
Debbie.
no, I had no idea. I mean, that's your background, you come in, one of your companies is a media company and marketing and PR and things. I had no idea that there are 17 global goals. I might be the only person that's living in in an alternative planet, but who's telling us that there are 17 global goals? I mean, what's going on there? Why aren't they, talking about this? They're talking about whatever global, climate change. It is getting too hot, and there are too many floods, and and the glaciers here in Europe. The glaciers are melting, and blah blah blah. You hear all this stuff, which is dramatic, horrid, really, really, scary stuff. But what are the goals? What is, I mean, we hear that, reduce, I think it was by 1.5 degrees is reduced. That's the only goal that I've ever heard of, That's the only
Yeah.
one I've ever heard of. So, I don't
Yeah.
know, do you think it's important that we know these, or
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, climate change and, for example, healthy oceans and good water management. So there won't be any more floods and tsunamis and all these horrible and natural disasters. It's all in there. They're all in the Sustainable Development Goals. And they are part of what is called the Agenda 2030. So within 15 years, because they were launched in 2015, the overall goal is to achieve these 17 goals in a concerted effort between businesses and governments and civil society and individuals, people like you and me, consumers. And actually, in the business community, a lot of larger businesses have actually embraced the SDGs as well, not all of them, because yeah, it's impossible and it's not effective. And it reduces impact if you aspire to work on all 17 goals. So that's why it's important to choose the ones that resonate most with you, which you feel most connection to as a person and as a professional, and where your business also can really create a positive impact. So in the world of larger businesses, they're quite well known, but yeah, among smaller businesses that I meet and among the general public, there's much less awareness about these 17 goals.
So I mean, Sandy was shaking her head as well. She hadn't heard of them. I don't know about you, Stephen. Welcome, David. Glad you could make it despite the time change.
Hi, David.
Yeah, we're talking about Katja just shared that there, as a small business owner, how can we participate or support, global not environmental, but social goals, social impact goals, right? And she said there are actually 17 global goals, and they've been announced, and I hadn't heard of it. That's the first I've heard of it, that there are 17. So I think that's actually quite fascinating. And the other thing, and I'm going to say this as a PR person, right? Would it make sense for a small business, one person business, like some of us have, to actually say, this is the one of the 17 goals that I support. Should we be making noise about that? Or let's be honest, okay, let's be really honest about this. Would it be difficult for us that someone else would come up and say, well, you're focusing only on that and not on this? So are we exposing ourselves to some kind of, nasty talk or something? I mean, this is just a question.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think it's perfectly reasonable, and actually most organizations, whether it's private businesses or public organizations or social organizations, they always choose, or usually they choose 3 to 4 maximum. That is the maximum number that I would amount of SDGs that I would recommend to work on, because yeah, you can do everything. And I mean, the reasoning behind the SDGs, the 17 goals, is that everything is interrelated, and we have to take a systems view if we really want to change things on the level of societies and the planet. Then we have to see things as being interrelated. But nevertheless, I mean, you can have much more impact if you focus on just several. And I mean, there's everything, you can just pick what suits your taste and preferences. I mean, there are SDGs about education, about fighting poverty, about gender equality, empowerment of women and girls, about oceans, about life on land, promoting green sustainable practices in forest or in agriculture. So I mean, there's a lot to choose from, and you can really pick what really fits your line of business and where you want to contribute to. And you can start small. I mean, especially as small businesses, we cannot pretend that we can change the world with our business and do it on our own, but you can start really small and take women's economic empowerment and empowerment of girls. That's something, for example, that can be very feasible even for a small business.
I remember when we were having our first conversation, I shared with you that someone back when I was running this coaching school, and we were changing from one server provider to a different server provider. And one of the reasons that I chose the one that we did eventually go with was because they had green energy. And that was, 5 years ago. And that could be something that you could also put in, I thought it was, just me. I thought nobody cares but me, but I thought it was kind of cool. And it actually came up in, someone was actually challenging me about, all this trouble and changing it, and I can't access my account. And oh God, it was really, a lot of complaining. And besides all of the energy that this costs, and I was able to come back and say, you know what? The ones that we're working with now have green energy, and the ones that we had prior to that, they didn't, they were just cranking out, whatever it is they were doing. So I thought that was actually important. And I think that, even as, I don't know, if you're a coach or whatever it is, you could say, I don't know, maybe you say my car runs on electric energy or something. I have no idea, but make some noise about it. That's what draws the attention.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If we want to further green and social consciousness and positive contributions in the world, we should actually be very vocal about it and publish this on our website and mention it in conversations we have with potential clients, and select the partners we want to work with, whether it's an energy provider or an organization that we want to work together with to further our positive goals, or even not even necessarily focusing on our social contribution, but as a working relationship. I mean, I would select, talking of coaches, for example, a while ago, I was looking for a business coach, and I mean, there's so many out there. And then there was this one business coach that put on her website that she invests a percentage of her income, of her earnings, into supporting a charity foundation, which works with, I think it was kids in difficult circumstances. For me, that was the reason to choose her business over many others that were maybe professionally as good as she was. But this was the defining added social value that made me choose her. And this becomes more and more important in the business world and in B2B business, but also in business to business relations, but also in business consumers selecting the businesses that they want to buy products from or hire services from. So yeah, absolutely, it is key to communicate your positive commitment and your pro-social goal if you have selected what you want to focus on. Yes. Yeah.
Purpose-driven from the heart is what you were telling me. Purpose-driven from the heart. So
yeah, exactly. Yes, and I mean that also reminds me something else that we've chatted about, Debbie. It's about like continuing on this. Once you are committed to contributing something positive to the world beyond just doing your good and valuable work, which is also a good contribution in itself. So how do you keep the momentum, and how do you avoid feeling overwhelmed by, the problems are so big, and then we see drama always everywhere. We hear it everywhere: climate change, floods, global warming, workers that are being exploited. And I mean, it can be depressing. And yeah, I think the important thing is always to keep in mind that small steps matter. I mean, if we imagine that we all decided today, every small entrepreneur decided today, okay, I'm going to do my part, that would make a huge impact. So that's why I say we are the change. We are the ones that can bring positive change in the world, and the world starts here, starts just outside where we stand. It starts in our homes, it starts in our offices. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you have any questions, I have a gazillion, but I don't want to be the only one asking.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll and I mean, you can raise your hand anytime and ask questions further along the conversation. But yeah, what else can you do as a small business to create positive change, or to inspire change? So yeah, the first thing that I said was choose your goal, pick your goal. And then incorporate this into your purpose as a business and as a business owner. So this means link this to the values and the principles that that inspire your work, that inspire your daily actions, your relations with your consumers, with your clients. And also, I think it's very important to incorporate this positive purpose and positive social impact into your leadership style. So what do you stand for? Who do you stand with? And how does this reflect into your relations with your workers, if you have a team, with the partners you select? What do you expect from them? when it comes to doing green and socially responsible business. What can they expect from you? How can you be this inspiring example that not only inspires others within your team, in your professional network, but also sets a concrete good example and makes decisions that are driven by this positive purpose and by this impact that you want to create. I see Stephen has his hand raised.
Yes. And I just wanted to, I really enjoyed what you said about, noticing who, how you're being and noticing who you were around. And there's some people that I know that they won't fly because they're trying to live or embody the very ideals that they're espousing. And there are a lot of cases, people will say one thing, but then do another. And so you see it often with there's cases where someone will say, like if people are talking about, trying to, it's social justice and equality. Like there's a reporter that stood up and said, um, you know, please give the next question to a woman. And the gentleman said, well, why don't you give up your spot to her? And he wouldn't do it. And it's this idea that it's okay if somebody else does it, but it's not okay if I do it. So how do, is there any movement in that direction where this authenticity, because I really enjoyed when my friend said, I'm not going to fly because it's against what I believe. I honor that, right? And I think that's something that we can get behind, is that authenticity. And it's we all have differences in how we process things and how we believe. But when somebody is saying one thing and doing the very thing that they say, I find that truly honorable. So is there a way to notice that or to judge it? Because I had an experience where I was on the Green Building Council, and they said this exact quote to me: the mission is more important than the truth. And that I had to leave the Green Building Council because I couldn't be part of a lie. And that's a problem. And I know that things have changed and things have gotten different, but I would imagine that a lot of people have been burnt in that philosophy that the ends justify the means. And so my question again goes back to, is there any litmus test for people that are authentic, that are real, and are just not using, doing this as a mechanism to look like they're a good guy?
Yeah. Good question. And it has several components, and it's not always easy to answer, because being consistent and practicing what you preach and being authentic. I mean, I always try to promote that people do that, but there were always inconsistencies, and a positive purpose is never perfect. I mean, it is a road that we travel. So I think when it comes to we've mentioned communications and marketing, I think it is key to be honest on as a business, on what you do and what you don't do, on what you are achieving when it comes to positive change, and where you stumble or where you still are not up to speed. And what we see in practice, a lot of businesses, what they do is they try to hide the things that are not so good, and highlight and with stars and like putting in a brilliant spotlight the positive things they do. That is a lack of authenticity that is in the end quite easy to pinpoint. And actually there are a lot of consumer organizations and groups, civil society groups, that are on top of that, on unmasking these greenwashing practices. But I mean, there's another area where we really have to admit that it is a road, and it is you cannot strive or not expect anybody, any business or any consumer, when we think of purchasing practices, what we buy and what we don't buy, to be perfect. I mean, it is a road. We cannot change everything at every level, but we have to be honest about it, and we have to be able to we have to have the arguments, the foundations to say, this is what I do, this is what I can do, this is what I strive for, and here I haven't achieved my green or social goal, haven't been able to achieve it yet. And I think the example you mentioned about flying, I think that's actually a very interesting example where you can see a lot of changes actually happening, because I have a lot of friends that, I mean, sustainable business, it is my area of work, it has been for 20 years, but people who are new to that, they, you know, it doesn't ring a bell, but more and more people who have not been interested in this issue at all because they didn't see it as something relevant for their lives, they are saying the same thing. I'm not flying, or I'm trying to reduce the number of air travels that I do in my life and in a year. And so, I mean, those are real signs, I think, that a change is underway, and that people who were not into this realm of sustainability are actually jumping on the train, jumping on the bandwagon, and are onboarding. So I think these are the small steps that gradually will grow, will increase. And again, this is why it is so important to be vocal about what you are doing as a business. Are you working towards a positive goal? Say it, spread the word, because this invites other people to do the same as well. Debbie?
Yeah, I have a question. I totally buy into it. I agree with everything you're saying. The question that I have, though, and a lot of self-employed, like myself, we can do a lot of things on Zoom, and we can do a lot of, work online and things, but we do have to actually go out and see our customers sometimes, or we are, to market ourselves. We need to go and talk maybe at a trade show, or go to places where our potential customers are. And I see it as a difficulty to actually, how are we going to, do that? Like say, I don't fly, but I have to go to Chicago for an event where everyone that is in, I don't know, horse training or something, and I'm a horse trainer or something, and I want to go talk to them. So I guess I'm answering my own question. Because you said you can pick 17. There are 17 goals. So I don't have to pick the one that I'm not flying. So, okay, I answered my own question. Thank you.
Yeah, or yes, but yeah, or strive to reduce the numbers of flights that you do. I mean, and you cannot avoid all flights, because yeah, it is necessary. You have to go from you have to fly from Berlin to Chicago, and how are you going to do it? You're not going to take a boat, but you also don't want to miss out on that new client opportunity or networking opportunity. So that is actually what I was referring to when I mentioned be clear about, balance, and be clear about what you do and what you don't do, what you can do and what you can do. I mean, we cannot be perfect, but we can strive to be better always.
I think the important thing here is to not get hung up on one thing, is that there are 17 goals, and of those 17, we can start looking for whatever fits. I think that's the key message. That was the key takeaway.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, keep it also light and make it fun. I mean, that's a bit of an issue with all the talk about, on the one hand, it is good that there's a lot of attention now in media and in corporate sustainability reports and in information campaigns launched by civil society organizations, by public government authorities. There's a lot of attention about the environment, about good working conditions for employed people in global supply chains, etc. So that's all good. But the risk is that we as consumers and as businesses feel that we have to live up to some harsh and not so fun standard. So let's also keep it, make it fun. It is actually fun to build a better world. And no, we cannot do everything. It's not in our capacity to do everything in the best possible way, but let's not be too harsh on ourselves. And yeah, and also work together, be complementary. I think that's another thing when going back to the to one of your first questions, Debbie, about what can we do. I think we also have to realize, and this is also a fun thing to do, we cannot do it alone and we shouldn't do it alone. So collaborating with like-minded partners is another thing that I would always recommend, small businesses and large ones as well. So try to work together with a larger company, for example. You can be their supplier, you can be their service provider. Work together with a partner in civil society, with an NGO, work together with a government organization, and align on, pick those goals that you want to work with and align your efforts and be complementary. Complementary. I don't know if I'm saying that well in English.
Thank you so much for making a highlight on it. Should be fun,
Yeah.
I think we're putting up with too much seriousness. It is serious. It is friggin' serious. But if it's not going to get better if we are in panic mode or scared mode or something like that, it's not going to make it attractive for others as well. I think that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask David. David always has something to say, and today he's quite quiet. So how would you see, let's say, servant leadership connect with the social impact in a way for how leaders can have a social impact? Have you had any ideas? Well, ahas while you're sitting here listening.
Yeah, I got a bunch. Yes. And servant leadership is opposite of bossism. I have a phrase, bossism is dead. It is. Because millennials, I'm looking at you and you're a millennial, you're a millennial, you're a millennial. Millennials are the ones that will be making a difference in our world. Not old guys like me, millennials. Y'all have seen your families, they come home from work and they fight, or they get in arguments or some other things. Sorry for the cat. Or something else that's going on, which is usually driven by the woman at her job, doesn't like her job, not being treated well. The man feels like he's not being treated well, not respected, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm looking at you guys, and you guys are the ones that are going to be making the difference in our world. At one of the companies where I worked, I hired the first Black female designer. And she actually had a degree in engineering, but she wanted to be a designer because engineers had to get into all the little technical and legalistic things of the design, and designers can just be creative. So I hired her because she was the best candidate we had. And I had to educate I had 3 mentors at the time. So we had an interview with all of us in that interview. And one day after she got hired and she was in work, I had 3 directors from different engineering sectors come into my office, and they all 3 said, "We're not going to work with her." And I said, "Well, you are going to work with her, and I'll tell you why. Because she's an engineer. She knows more about engineering than the engineers that work for you that came from a college. All they did was memorize stuff out of the book." And they left understanding that they're going to have to use her. And it was 3 months. 3 months later, she was the most requested designer I had out of 68 designers. You know, so you've got to open your mind. So in servant leadership, being different of bossing, you have to be able to communicate with your employees. You also need employees who can communicate back with you. And servant leaders usually empower their employees. And so that way it gives them the strength to make decisions. I started off with 78 designers. I didn't want to make decisions for 78 designers all day long. A boss, that's what they want. They want someone where they can make all the decisions because, of course, you know, they're the boss, so they need to make all those decisions. But they also, in order to prove that they're the boss, they have to go to every meeting they can find that they might be able to go to because you know they're the boss. They got to make sure everyone knows that they're the boss. At the same time, when you were talking about business, when you have a project that you're working on for a customer, and that customer has already been promised a delivery time of X, okay, and what happens a lot of times with the boss mentality is the boss mentality has to answer everyone that has a question. So if someone has a question, they have to wait for the boss, or they're going to get beat with a whip or whatever by the boss if they do it themselves. Well, what do? Well, they sit there and wait. They get tired of waiting and they go and talk with somebody else. That makes that person not working, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Let me ask you, David, though, for one, what I, in particular to this servant leadership and social impact, what I think two things came up for me while you were talking. One is the story, you know, Katja is big into storytelling, into how these stories work. You can be using that story to share how your business, what servant leadership means for not only women's equality, but for the effectiveness of a company, you know?
Correct.
That's true. And the other thing that came up for me is that the impact on profits, for example, you know, it's the equality of having a woman on the team or a man on the team, doesn't really matter. The profits are not going to change in the sense that it's going to be worse. That's the thing, right? So
it's usually better under servant leadership.
Yes, exactly.
And
thank you, David. Yeah, and I mean there's a lot of market research being done, and not only market research by like consultancy firms like McKinsey and Deloitte, but also in the academic sphere. There's a lot of studies being done that confirm that actually having more women on board and having more on board in boards in the boardroom, but also at several different management levels of a business, as well as a more culturally diverse or more ethnicities, or how do you call them in different. It's actually good for profits. It's good for innovation. Yes. It's good for productivity. It is good for attracting consumers because, yeah, you mentioned millennials, David. These are the consumers that are, and the Gen Zs are the ones that are used to grow up in a very culturally diverse environment where women are more and more taking the lead as well. So diversity and inclusion from that point of view as well. So of course, they will be more attracted. They are more attracted than the old school customers, to call them in a not very flattering way, to businesses that also breathe this diversity and inclusion. So yeah, it's absolutely a positive thing to be doing and to be promoting. And another thing that I liked about what you shared, David, is I see this your promotion of servant leadership has a lot in common with what I like to call purpose-driven leadership or impact leadership for positive change. in that it invites other people. It is a dialogue. It is not only thinking of me as the boss, but also empowering other members of my organization to take up a role that is key to the growth of my organization and key to serving my clients in the best possible way. So yeah, I think it taps into a lot of, sorry, I'm connecting my cable meanwhile. Yeah, to a lot of developments that are going on in leadership, in business, and in society in general, where we really see that the mainstream way of leading and telling the other what to do is not working anymore.
Yeah, we got something else to add on that. The thing that's been bothering me about women in high-level management positions, and I'm not talking about everybody, I'm talking about some. The ones where I see a problem is when they try to do the same damn thing their idiot male bosses do. That's stupid. I'm going to use my wife as an example. She's very creative. She's got a degree in fashion design. She is very creative. She had things going on in the way she dressed before they were fashions. And, you know, that's just a creative mindset. And so what I want to see out of women, particularly in high level positions, I want to see that creative mindset come on. I want to see the level of respect come on, because women in general, and it's just a fact, women in general have more respect for other people than men do most of the time. And so that's what I want to see, because there's a lot of difference between being a boss and being a leader. There's a lot of difference between being a leader and being a servant leader. Because on politics, they want to call all their politicians leaders. They're not politicians. They're pocket fillers, trying to take your money, put it in their pocket. They don't care about you at all. And that's not the way it should be. And so, you know, I want to be part of making that change.
Yeah, and I think to your point about women showing up as themselves and contributing their strength, I mean, it's a two-way thing, right? We talk about women's economic empowerment or women breaking the glass ceilings, etc. But I mean, it is also about men giving women the room, the space to show up and to show up as themselves, and that is what is lacking a lot still.
Yes, and that's where you had to get into. You know, I've been fired from a couple of companies. I've left a lot of companies because the leadership is not leadership. It's bossism. This way we always done it. We ain't never going to change. Well, I'll try to change them. I did have one change, but you know, if they don't want to change, that's their business. But they usually go out of business. You know, I'm not going to be part of a company that's going to go out of business. I'm going to go off and go somewhere else that's being profitable. And so
I think
my wife,
we can talk about this subject until the cows come home, David.
Yeah.
I think this is a subject that is that is valuable enough for its own conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of the time, and we have 2 minutes left, and I wanted to give Sandy an opportunity to ask a question, or Arcadian, if you have a question. Thank you for coming. And give you folks now an opportunity to ask a question before we close it down for today. We have at least, 1 minute left, and I'm happy to draw it out by a couple of you if you guys have any questions still.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was wonderful. There's so much to learn from you, Katja. I'm definitely going to look up that 17 goals, what that is, and I think every one of us can make a positive change. Part of my coaching is I do a lot of career coaching for university students, and I like to back up what you're saying. I mean, in relation to saying company must have a good social impact kind of goal, because in Asia, where I came from, I lived in Vietnam for several years, and so I attended several HR meetings, And they all complain one thing is retentions of talents. They don't know how to retain talents. I don't know whether it's the same thing in the other part of the world. And so, and I actually have insights because I do a lot of coaching for university students. And they were saying that is the reason, I mean, now the top three things that they look for when they look for jobs, we're talking about millennial and the Gen Z. One of the top three is whether the company have social impact.
Yeah. Yes.
If they don't, it's not about the company names anymore. It's not because, oh, I work in Coca-Cola or I work in HSBC. It's how much social impact the company actually engage. And so that was a thing that I want to add to it, is that the company needs to, or maybe there are many already, but I don't think by and large is as many as we wanted. And in Vietnam, the government is trying to encourage private enterprises to be involved more in the social impact. You know what they do is they give company tax reduction. Okay, if you do things like, you know, engage in social impact activities, hire more people in that front. So to encourage companies, especially local company in Vietnam, that where the leadership usually are not driven like this, right? They want to driven by profit. They think that all the people need to come up with money and stuff. So that's something that I want to edit. Sorry, I take a bit too much time.
No.
No, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah, and I
That's
mean,
good to
that's
hear.
another aspect we haven't had time to delve into that, but actually to attract and retain talent, it's exactly as you say from your experience and from what you have seen in Asia. It is also confirmed by research everywhere that yeah, having a social impact and being honest about it and authentic and not just as a nice marketing gimmick trick tool actually helps to attract talented workers and retain people in your organization. So yeah, very good point. Thank you.
Y'all hook up with me on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
folks, we're coming to a close. Arcadian just put in a document you can download, and the Katja's contact information is right at the top of the chat message. So you have a chance to go and download that if you want to get that real quick. Her LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, all that other stuff is in there. So you guys, websites and things, I'd have, you know, highly encourage you to have a look at the website. It's fascinating. And with that, if there's anything else anyone wants to say other than that, I would say thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Katja, for a fascinating conversation. I'm totally enthralled, and I hope we will stay in touch, and wish you guys a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And
too.
yeah, let's be in touch. You can always write me and find free resources on my website and subscribe to the newsletter, Fair Change newsletter. And
Oh, very
yeah,
good. Yes.
we'll be in touch.
Thanks a million. All right, guys.
Okay. Bye.
See you next week, I hope, right? Join us next
My
week.
best Texas Italian, a river dirty. River Italian.
Arrivederci.